are working very closely together to coordinate. Our goal is to really help to provide consistency and continuity across New York State so that regardless of which region, there is some consistency. And we've done that at the advice of our New York State Education Department. Also on the call with us today are members of our New York State Cares for Communities collective team. So we have Caitlin Ingaglia, who's our educational specialist at Fordham. Casey Pultz is an assistant director at Binghamton. Ann Dayton is our administrative assistant at Binghamton. And then we have our wonderful partners from Change Impact who are helping us to manage and navigate this information session. Jen Curry, Allie Wittenberg, and Therese Workman. They've been very supportive in helping us to develop and roll this out. So as Allie mentioned, we have a chat box, so we will ask that you put your questions in the chat box. Our team will be monitoring the chat box and will answer questions at the end of the session. This is a new initiative, so we may not have all the answers for you today. If we don't have them, we will go back to our New York State Education Department contact and make sure we get the answers. We will be developing a frequently asked question platform that will be put on the website that Allie will be putting the link in our chat box so you can find all the information there. We're going to keep that updated as questions come in so that we'll make sure that as soon as we have answers, we'll be posting it there. So please check that frequently because that will be our way of keeping you all informed. Our first posting of the frequently asked questions will be on Friday, the 21st by the close of business. So to give you a little background, the New York State Education Department has allocated funding from the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as CARES Act, to Binghamton University and Fordham University to launch what we have now titled the New York State Cares for Communities, or NYSCFC initiative. So this initiative is designed to leverage support in identified communities that were defined as most adversely impacted by the corona pandemic. The initiative is designed to work in partnership with and support community and faith-based organizations with a 501c3 status and evidence of serving youth and families. So our Cares for Communities is an expansion of the NYSCFC Community Schools Technical Assistance Centers. These they're also referred to as CSTACs. These regional technical assistance centers facilitate development and sustainability of community schools across New York State through a variety of services and resources. These resources are available to schools and community partners free of charge. So we do want you to take time and visit their website, which is nyscommunityschools.org. There are 3 regions served by the TAC. The Central Western region is served by Binghamton University. There's an Eastern region, which is led by Rockland 21C. And then New York City, Fordham University leads that work. So please refer to that website because regardless of where you live or work in New York State, they may have resources that can help you. So the funding that we're here to talk about today has been made available in an effort to allocate resources designed to support students and families around 4 key program areas. The proposed programs and services should fall into one or more of the following categories: social emotional learning and/or mental health services, academic enrichment, digital literacy for students and families, and family services. Organizations have the opportunity to outline their plans for aligning with any of these areas in the application, which we will discuss further as we get a little further in our presentation. So Binghamton University and Fordham have each received their separate contracts, as I said, from New York State Education Department. These contracts are used to help leverage resources and allocate funding to regions that were identified by New York State. The counties that were identified were those that were considered to be most adversely impacted by coronavirus based on county infection rates and the percentage of students experiencing economic disadvantage. These next few slides will highlight the specific regions that have been identified and which university will serve as the point of contact for community partners. Binghamton University will serve the following counties: Erie, Monroe, Niagara, Orleans, Madison, Oneida, Onondaga, Albany, Columbia, Dutchess, Greene, Orange, Putnam, Rockland, Schenectady, Sullivan, Ulster, and Westchester. Partners in these regions will be working with our Binghamton University Cares for Communities team. And now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Marianne, who can talk about her region and a little more about the application process.
Thank you, Luann, and I want to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today. My name is Marianne DeVivio, Project Coordinator for CARES. So here you'll see the areas being supported by the team at Fordham University, which include the 5 counties of New York City, as well as Nassau and Suffolk counties of Long Island. Applications will be reviewed and evaluated based on 5 main categories. First, organizational context, encompassing the background and capacity of the organization and the ways it has supported the community during the pandemic. Second, program design and evidence-based strategies, where organizations will be asked to outline their proposed plans for the use of funds and how services will be implemented. Community connectedness refers to the organization's plans to meet the specific needs of the community they support, as well as the commitment to equitable and accessible offerings. The next section of the application is the needs evaluation and impact, which asks for applicants to indicate what elements of data they have used to develop relevant services for the community, as well as desired outcomes and tools for measurement. The final area of evaluation is capacity to manage resources and budget, where organizations are asked to outline their capacity to manage the requested amount of funding and provide a potential budget. We have provided a sample spreadsheet for applicants that they can use to submit for review as part of the application to outline how awarded funds will be allocated. Our website, which is newyorkstatecommunityschools.org, has a Google document for those that would find it helpful to see all the application questions and potentially prepare responses ahead of time. We can put this in the chat box as well, and the document is set in a view only, but you can make a copy to create a space for editing and drafting your responses. Moving on to our timeline and important dates, we are encouraging organizations to submit an online notice of intent form by June 4th, which is all included in the email that was sent out to the CBOs and FBOs. You may fill this out if you are planning to submit an application, and this step is not required, but it's helpful to the team in our understanding on how many applications may be collected. The application itself will be due on June 18th. Again, both the notice of intent and the application are Google Forms. The online form does not allow you to progress to the next section without completing each answer, so we recommend reviewing the questions and drafting answers ahead of time using the planning document. After June 18th, each application will be reviewed and the organization will be contacted regarding the status of their application. And what you see on the screen now is what you've received, the link to the application and to the notice of intent. So before we wrap up, we wanted to share the names of the Binghamton and Fordham teams that are bringing these plans to fruition. The organizations in New York City and Long Island will be coordinating with myself and Caitlin, while the rest of the eligible regions will coordinate with Luann, Casey, and Ann from Binghamton. We hope this information was helpful in your planning process. We are compiling questions and inquiries into a frequently asked question document that will be posted to our website by the end of this week and sent to everyone who attended today. We will take a few minutes to address anything that came up in the chat that we can respond to. Hopefully, many of your questions have been answered during this presentation, and for those that weren't, we will do our best to provide key details in a follow-up email to everyone. Thank you for attending, and please be sure to check our website for the updates and any relevant resources.
So Ally, Jen, or Therese, do we have questions that we can answer now?
Sure, Luann, one question was the application process. And I just want to, if you just want to clarify that about the Google form, that there aren't any other databases or platforms necessary.
Yes, so the Google form that I believe is, the link is in the chat box. We worked really hard as a team to make this as easily accessible to our partners that are going to be working on this with us. So this is it's as streamlined as we can get it. So those Google forms should take you right straight through. And even the questions are enough information to help make sure that we understand the work you want to do, but not so complicated that you need a grant writer to help you with the process. Do we have other questions? I see lots popping up. It's hard to.
Yeah, I see 33, but I think it's our links as well.
Yes,
So-
sorry, we're just trying to read them and see if there's any we can combine into one question for you.
Okay.
So there was a question about when is the grant being awarded and when is the official start date, which I know is addressed in our frequently asked questions, but I don't know if you want to give another broad overview, Luann, of the timeline.
The funding has to be allocated by September 22nd of September 30th of 2022. The start date can be anytime after we notify you. Our goal is to notify applicants in August. It will depend on how many applications we get as to how soon we can get back to the applicants, but the goal is in August to give the date. And once you get confirmation, then it will be, you can start as soon as contracts and things are secured.
Yeah, and Luann, there was a question here while we kind of read through some of these other ones. And again, I appreciate everyone's patience. We won't get to every specific question today, but we will be following up and addressing all of them in our frequently asked questions document and that correspondence. But we had a question again, maybe for folks that joined a little late or missed it, for the overall intent of the funding. I don't know if you can share, Luann, maybe back from the beginning, just a brief overview of the intention behind this initiative.
Let me get back to that slide so I speak from. So the intention really was to support community-based and faith-based organizations that are working with students and families. The broad answer is that we know students and families are struggling with the pandemic, with remote learning, with social emotional needs, mental health. So the four areas really are around social emotional learning and mental health services, academic enrichment, digital literacy for students and families, or family services. So ways to support families so that they can address the needs of the children in their household. And it is very broad. It's intentionally broad because we really want this to be specific to the community. We don't pretend to know what communities need. So we are relying on our community-based and faith-based organizations to help define what they think their community is in need of under these four broad areas.
Luann, I think you should also add in there along the lines of the COVID data that's been an ongoing review of the COVID data to see the counties that have been most impacted And those will be selected.
Right. The counties that we outlined were identified by using the infection rates in New York State, and then cross-listing that with economic levels of economic disadvantage, or using student economically disadvantaged data. So that's how they were defined. Because the funding was not, this wasn't enough to do all the needs. We know there's bigger needs than that, but that's how they narrowed it to make it more manageable.
Thank you. And I'll just share one or two questions are referred to application criteria. And I'll just share two logistics and just note that a couple of these questions will be addressed in the application instructions. So in that actual Google form or in the document that outlines the application questions, which we shared in the chat and we'll share again in our follow-up so folks can see that. But the range, someone asked about the range of funds that could be awarded is between $10,000 and $25,000. So that's what you'll be asked to submit, a number in between in that range. And we do have someone asked about character minimum or maximum. And so in our short answer or narrative questions, there is a maximum of 2,000 characters. So about 4 to 5 paragraphs. And again, we outline this in the planning document so that you can map out your responses before filling out that Google form, if that's helpful. And again, I'll just flag, we have several questions coming in about the application process in terms of sharing or applying with another organization. And we want you to know that we see your questions and we will address them in our follow-up, but just can't get to every specific one at the moment. So many of these are addressed in some of the correspondence we have coming for you. Oh, Luann, sorry, you're muted.
Thank you. We can do encourage you to continue to put your questions in, because as Ally mentioned, we may not get to all of them today, but we will make sure that we have them all outlined and answered, and will continue. So even as you have questions, once you start the process, if there are questions that come up, please feel free to send them to us, and we will continue to update so that everybody has the same answers. That's our goal, is we want to make sure that we're all giving you all the same information.
Yes, and I did see a question, Joy. There is no age requirement listed in the application or the eligibility criteria. So there is a question, there is context about the families and children that the programs serve, but there's not a specific age breakdown. So that's also listed in the application. You can indicate the communities you're serving and how many people would potentially be reached.
And I did see about schools applying, and this is not funding intended for schools. There's other funding coming through the CARES Act specific to schools. So this really is for community and faith-based organizations. I would encourage schools to reach out to your community partners and see if there's something you can do together, and have it come through your community agencies. But
And I see about several questions coming in about folks that might serve more than one region. And there is, again, that's noted in the application, and you'll have an opportunity to indicate that there. So you'll select the counties that you serve, and there's a note where you can add additional information if you're across more than one region.
And the maximum is 25,000 to any one organization, regardless of how many counties or regions you're in. So only 25,000 is all you can get.
And again, some of these questions about what services and programming would be eligible are addressed in the application. So we give a few examples, and you will see the categories which the services and programs should fall into. And it isn't necessarily only direct to youth programming. So you'll have some opportunity to explain who you will reach and how. So that could be across youth and adult audiences.
Ellie, I just want to reiterate also, as we discussed, the letter intent is not absolutely necessary, but it's based upon the number of participants that are on this webinar. We suggest that you send in, because the deadline is June 4th. So we suggest that you send it in so that we have an idea on the number of applications we'll be reviewing.
Thanks, Marianne. Yeah, and for those who aren't sure, again, you'll see all these links coming to your way. They're on the website that we've listed, but the notice of intent is just a brief Google form so that you can indicate that you will be applying, and then that gives you time to fill out the larger extended application. So if you are interested, you could fill out that notice of intent just to give this team notice that you plan on applying. And again, I'll just flag something Luann shared in the beginning, that this is, we're rolling this out as we speak. So a few of these questions bring up good clarifications for this team to identify answers and provide to you all. And so I just want to flag that several people are asking about how many awards will be distributed and the timeline specifically. And we are being mindful of the communities and the people that may be applying. And so we haven't sent out as many of those details, but we will be providing that information in the near future. And yes, if you fill out the notice of intent, that is by no means a commitment. That is just you expressing interest. The only way that you would be reviewed for eligibility would be if you submitted an application. So there's no binding contract or language based on filling out the Google form, which is the notice of intent.
I just want to also add, I know Allie said it in the start of the session, this will be recorded because I see a lot of questions on, again, from the recording, and I'm not certain if those people joined late. So this absolutely will be recorded and posted.
And all of your questions will be answered, even if we're not doing this in live time.
And yes, there is a character count maximum for answers in the application. And again, we strongly recommend, these are recommendations, the notice of intent that allows you to indicate your interest, and then also using the planning document, which you could convert to a Word document or a Google Doc to prepare your answers and see all of the questions outlined in the application before you actually go through the Google form. So that really lays out each category and what is being asked of you. And so you and your team can prepare and see if it makes sense for your organization.
And I do want to mention that although there aren't age requirements, this is really designed to address learning loss, remote learning needs. So there should be really trying to think through how to support families through that communities and schools kind of approach.
And again, if there was something that you didn't feel was addressed today, I know several of these questions are about the application. So there are some specifics outlined in the application. But if you're in the process of filling it out or reviewing the questions and you have an additional clarification needed, we do give some examples of programming. So several of you have asked about that. There are a few examples in the application, but if you have a specific question or need when filling it out, you can feel free to reach out to the emails that we'll provide as contact information. So namely the Fordham team and the Binghamton team, who can help you navigate that process as well.
One of the questions also asked, can they change their mind once they submit a letter of intent? And yes, you can change your mind once you submit a letter of intent.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge, feel free to the other panelists to jump in and share anything that you've seen in the chat or the questions that everybody would need to know. That would be helpful. But we realized we set this for an extended period of time, not knowing, how many questions we'd be able to answer. So feel free, if you have to run, go ahead. If you have another question that you want to put in the chat so we can document that, feel free to do so. And we will be sure to follow up with every link, all the resources, the contact information that we mentioned, the slides and the recording from today. And again, we're going to work very quickly to get all of your questions answered and make sure that that information is disseminated as soon as possible. But feel free to put any other burning questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we will be sure to take those with us. We'll give it another couple of minutes while folks are still processing.
I see a question about when it can start. Services should not start before you receive verification that you've received the funding. So we can't backdate. It has to be once we've received you've gotten approval from us. But you could be while we're working through some of the contractual paperwork. There may be some ways to start a little bit, but it has to be once it's been accepted, because not all proposals will be accepted. So I don't want you going off and starting programming and finding out that there's no funds available. There's a question about staffing costs, and some staffing we realize you have to have staffing. The intent though really is to get this out to help families and students. So it should not, that should be a smaller part of the funding rather than the major part of the funding.
I think it's also helpful to clarify that the September 30th, 2022 date is the date that the funds are to be spent by, awarded funds are to be spent by. The goal is to notify the recipients later this summer.
Okay.
I think does it feel like we're slowing down? So.
Yeah, I think that people are starting to head out, and we will be sure to capture all the questions. Again, thank you to all of our New York State Cares for Communities representatives here today, who provided some valuable information and have been working hard on this initiative. We'll again be sure to follow up. If you registered for this webinar, you will receive a follow-up with all of the relevant resources and information. as well as the links to our website where we'll continue to post updates and any important dates. So thank you so much. And again, one last call to put anything in the chat, and we look forward to learning more about your programs and supporting. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you and have a safe afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.